Today we are discussing the Gospel of John. Thus far we've done the Gospel of Mark, the Gospel of Matthew. Both of those were synoptic Gospels. Today we move on to the Gospel of John, which, if you read the assignment, you would have seen that's rather different from the synoptics in a wide variety of ways. Now, let me review here real quick. What's the central message of the Gospel of Mark? What's the central message of the Gospel of Mark? What's that? That's among one of the main things that Jesus wants for his followers in the Gospel of Mark. His expectations are that you will be poor, that you'll give your money to the poor, that you'll be a servant for all. What? Tell me a little bit more about that.
First will be last, and last will be first.
First will be last will be first. Who is Jesus in the Gospel of Mark? He's the Son of God. He's a Messiah, but not a classic Messiah. He's a backwards Messiah. But what else is he? I think that if you think Gospel of Mark, one word should come to mind. Do you have a guess, Carl? Anthony?
I got that. I got it. Son of Man.
Well, that's related to it.
The apocalypse?
Yeah, I think if you guys hear Gospel of Mark, you should think apocalyptic prophet. The Gospel of Mark, Jesus is an apocalyptic prophet. The reason why you've got to do all that stuff he demands of you is because when the end comes, that's how you can save your skin, right? When the end comes, you can either be destroyed or you can be on his side and be members of the kingdom of God, but that will depend on your behavior. But above all else, in the Gospel of Mark, Jesus is an apocalyptic prophet. What is Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew? Son of David is part of it. I think there's something a little bit more central. Well, he's that too.
The new Moses.
Yeah. When you hear Gospel of Matthew, you should think new Moses. Now, what does that mean? How is he a new Moses?
Because he's like fulfilling the law.
Yeah, but what does that mean to fulfill the law?
He's giving a new interpretation.
Right. Moses received the law from God. Jesus gives this final interpretation of the law, the authoritative one. There's apocalypticism in the Gospel of Matthew. Jesus is a reverse Messiah in the Gospel of Matthew, similar to Mark. But I think what's fundamental for Matthew is you have to follow Jesus' interpretation of the law. The author of the Gospel of Matthew is at great pains to present Jesus as a Moses type of figure. What's one of the most important ways he presents Jesus as a Moses type of figure?
Moses receives the law on the mountain, and Jesus interprets them on the mountain.
Yeah, there's all these parallels to Moses' life. That's just one of them. Like Moses goes up on a mountain, receives the law. Jesus goes up on a mountain, the Sermon on the Mount, and interprets the law. But even before that in the Gospel of Matthew. What's the first thing Jesus does in the Gospel of Matthew?
I want to say get born. But
Yeah, he gets born. How is his birth similar to the Moses story?
Oh,
They're killing
yeah.
the firstborn son.
Yeah, there's a story about an oppressive ruler killing the firstborn children. Jesus/Moses escape. Egypt is involved somehow, right? From page 1 of the Gospel of Matthew, the author is putting Jesus out there as a new Moses, right? He doesn't do that in the Gospel of Mark. Jesus isn't a new Moses in the Gospel of Mark. There's none of those parallels to Moses in the Gospel of Mark. In Mark, he's an apocalyptic prophet. The end is near. The end is coming before all of you die. And if you don't follow me and become poor like I am and give your money to the poor, you're going to die when the apocalypse comes. In Matthew, it starts out, Jesus has got an interpretation of the law. He's the new Moses, and you need to follow his interpretation of the law. If Jesus in Mark is an apocalyptic prophet, and if Jesus in Matthew is a new Moses, what is Jesus in the Gospel of John? Jim? Yeah, he's a divine being. I would go, like, I think that central, and this connects to what we were talking before. Jesus is called the light of the world, right? He's this divine being that comes down. Now, that's similar to what extra canonical text that we looked at earlier in the semester. We did a comparison of these before. The Gospel of John, and we also looked at the secret book of John, right? In the secret book of John, Jesus is similarly this divine being that comes down to teach you all that you all have a divine spark inside of you. You all have that divine light inside of you. It's just covered over, and Jesus comes to help you find it, to help you reveal it to yourself, so that you can move on to the plane of existence that he is on. This is not the exact same thing, but it's similar in some respects. Jesus is this light of the world, this divine being that comes to save you. Now, open up right at the beginning, the Gospel of John. The Gospel of John, verse 1, chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning was the Word. And who is the Word? Well, not God. Jesus. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. Now, again, we learn later on that He is God, but here the Word is Jesus, and Jesus was with God from the beginning. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through Him, and without Him not one thing came into being. Now, first century Jews know a story about who created the world. It's in their Bible. Who created the world? Yahweh, right? On day 1, God spoke and it happened. On day 2, how many days did it take God to create the world? 6 days. He rested on the 7th, right? They know that Yahweh created the world. And here it says, all things came into being through the Word as well. So just as God was there in the beginning, so Jesus was this divine being who was there in the very beginning and participated in the creation of the world.